Hey, what are you doing here?
I'm going to replace my AfriCell 3G SIM card.
Why use a 3G SIM card when you have a 4G phone? Replace your 3G SIM card today for the real AfriCell 4G SIM and receive 1 GB of internet data for free.
Really?
Yes, get 1 GB for free just by replacing your SIM card at any AfriCell outlet. With no loss of contact, the cost of bundle from the 3G SIM card is the same for the 4G SIM. And guess what? With the 4G SIM card, you can also connect to the 3G network as well.
This is so cool. I'll replace my 3G SIM card right away to the real 4G SIM and receive my very own 1 GB for free.
From AfriCell, it's always real and it's for free.
Where AfriCell goes, no one has the speed to follow.
The outcome of the conference in the sense that the entire international community, every corner in the world, they are keen on supporting this Gambian transition in a way or in another. It also depends on the partner, the third country, the international organization to see what they can afford. But what was the biggest takeaway from the conference for me was the overwhelmingly wide and really overwhelmingly impressive support the Gambia is still enjoying. This shows that the momentum has been kept, which is good for the country for the future, regardless of whatever happens in the different projects which will come in the future. I see it important because this also means that the Gambian transition from a dictatorship to a genuine democracy is a positive concern for everybody in the world. Now, I think when it comes to really making a change, you need a supportive environment. And I think this is what the Gambia still enjoys. And this is why I say we have all the more responsibility on our shoulders. When I mean we, I mean the government, I mean the civil society, the entire country, as well as those so-called international donor partners. I also learned from the media reflections since the conference that there are voices of sort of bitterness, that all these amounts, I mean the amount which was offered as a total support of 1.45 billion euro or 1.7 billion US dollar, that all these are not grants. Indeed, that is the case. Slightly bigger half is of loans, concessional loans, and slightly smaller half is what is grant. Now, given the amount which is beyond any expectation, not even the most positive thinkers in the government or in the donor community ever thought that 180% of the financing gap of the National Development Plan will be pledged. So for those bitter voices, I would say two things. A, this is rather normal. A conference like this always includes pledges of not only grants but also loans. This is a clear indication or a clear manifestation of the very willing of the international community. Many wanted to support, and only half of them was in the position to offer grants. There is nothing wrong with that. However, it certainly brings along an additional responsibility for the government, for those who are in charge in the implementation of the National Development Plan, that is to make sure that A, on one hand, they follow up on each and every third country or international organization who made a pledge, to make sure that the pledges are going to be gradually brought into the country, but also to make sure that when selecting the pledges, they make a nice balance between grants and loans. Given the high degree of indebtedness of the country, of the Gambia, 130% of the GDP, the government has to be very, very careful when it comes to even considering additional loans to avoid increasing the debt. However, if those economic forecasts are correct, and the Gambian economy will start really progressing and booming, the government will be in position to decrease the indebtedness, and perhaps then they can subscribe to those pledges which were made in the form of loans. It is known by all experts that for really making an economy grow, you need investments, you need support, so unavoidably loans are also necessary to be undertaken. Not to mention that in some of the projects there is a combination of grants and loans in order to make sure that the project itself will be of a success. So what I want to say here is that it is really now for the government and the Gambian people all together to make sure that the National Development Plan is going to be rolled out. The conference itself was an opportunity. I think it was a great success. And what I also feel is that there is probably more the Gambia can benefit from than just the pledges made at the conference. Let me also refer to the fact that beside the pledging component of the conference, which was in the morning on the 22nd, there was a panel discussion in the afternoon with very good turnout of expertise from the Gambia, from international partners, from diaspora included, where details of the different reform plans were discussed. And I think this is also something where a great opportunity lies in terms of for the Gambia to benefit from expertise in these legal reforms, especially that of expertise existing among the diaspora Gambians.
Is it the Gambia government that's going to make follow-up on the countries or the partners who make the pledges, or is it EU who's going to make the follow-up for the loans, for the grant? And also, did EU have a team to monitor these projects that are going to be implemented in the Gambia? Yes.
The EU cannot babysit for the government, and the government doesn't have intention to ask the EU or expect the EU to do so. The EU, as well as the UN and other partners, are of course also ready to support the government building up their own capacities to monitor the pledges. Regarding the pledges, what is really a privilege for us in the EU is that I'm happy to announce that the EU pledge, which was made 140 million, on the top of the 225 million, these are grants, not a single penny in loans. Now, the mechanism the government will put in place, and the details of that, I will have to tell you that it's the government who knows best. So perhaps you got to ask that question from them, because I'm not in position to tell you. What I can assure you is that when time comes for the EU part of the pledges to put them into actions, because these are confirmed pledges. This is not a possible chunk of grants. These are grants which are foreseen in certain areas, so it will be delivered. But certainly, it's an important activity both by the government as well as by the civil society to make sure that these pledges are delivered as they were planned and for the purpose they were sent to. Now, let's clarify. It's not like cash transferred, brought home from Brussels. These grants are going to be the funding source of whatever project they are intended for. So it's not that the presidential delegation returned from Brussels with big boxes of cash. It's never like that. But rest assured, from the EU side, these grants will be delivered to the country, mark my word. And you asked the questions about the loans, right? The same question, basically. The answer is the same. But as I said earlier, at the beginning, I suppose the government will prefer following up on the grants because of the current situation of the country and the level of indebtedness of the economy. You can't really undertake additional loans at this stage. But again, figures like the macroeconomic figures and the indebtedness figures might improve and hopefully will improve in the future. So in the second year or the third year, the government may be in position to undertake those loans. I mean those concessional loans or whatever there. Yes, thank you, David. Indeed, I mean, no really sustainable development can be achieved without a good chunk of investment coming from all corners of the world. The EU intervention in terms of job creation and kind of establishing an environment in which the Gambian youth finds perspectives and alternatives to the back way is a key concern for us. That's why I believe when it comes to promoting the Gambia as a destination for investment, such forum can go a long way. Of course, it's not the only action to be done, but I understand your relevant institutions like the Gambian Chamber for Commerce and the other for investment. They are also doing their daily groundwork in terms of promoting the country. But it's a complex issue because, frankly, unless certain regulations are changed, the question for an investor is simple. How much time does it take for me to establish my business? How safe is my business? How secure? Because we all know what happened in the past. Now, this transition, this change needs to be communicated to the world. And I think in that sense, such business forum and others, which already being held and will be held in the future, can help a lot. But it needs to be associated with also further actions. So the government would need to be able to tell at some stage, like for a foreign investor, these are the advantages, the comparative advantages Gambia can offer. As I mentioned earlier, the European External Investment Plan is indeed aiming at helping investors come into places where they perhaps earlier considered like risky. And the guarantee mechanism put in the EIP is the one kind of targeting to mitigate the risks associated with the investment.
Then developments, people who are people of standards, people who are capable. And if these people are there, like for example, our government as I will take, our excuse often as we take is 3 years is too small.
In the sense that, yes, ownership in one's life is a key issue. I mean, no one is going to create this country for you just like that. You got to take lead in that. You got to enforce, you as voters in the country, you got to enforce your government with the democratically available means and methods, checks and balances, to make sure that they deliver on their program, on their promises, whatever it was in the manifesto. Now, for the young people, and let me clarify one thing, there is no project in the country only benefiting migrants, returnees. The YEP project is open to all youth. So it's not that the backway boys, returnees, would receive more than those who didn't take the perilous journey, but stayed at home. So when it comes to job creation for youth, there is no distinction in that sense. Shall not be, because we are not rewarding someone who made a decision and luckily survived the trip. It's rather providing possibilities for the young generation as a whole in the country. I also believe that I mean, Gambia is youthful, right? What, over 60% of the population is below the age of 35. That's the driving force. That's the driving force which, if engaging meaningfully, which means there are jobs created which they can undertake, and they also do something for their own. That will be the force which may really lift the country, elevate the country out of the level of development now.
So I'm delighted to be here today. His Excellency has given us a very comprehensive overview of the programme. There are a number of aspects to it. For me, I suppose the most obvious bit is the whole business about capacity building and transformation within the security sector, because as somebody who spent 34 years in uniform, I sort of understand what the military or an immigration service or the police looks like. That is for me slightly more familiar ground. For me, the much less familiar terrain is, of course, the whole business about parliamentary oversight, National Assembly. We met with the Defence and Security Committee last week, and indeed civil society organisations and how they operate, and the media. So that is the area where I have more to learn, and therefore I clearly look to you and your colleagues to assist me in understanding better. But what we do have within the interventions, and His Excellency mentioned it just now, is of course the ability to reach out, whether that's within Gambian or ECOWAS, regional society, media organisations and all the rest of it, or to reach back further afield. And my head office is in Geneva, it might be Brussels, it might be elsewhere. And one of the specific interventions is to invite editors and senior experienced journalists to come together, probably at 3 separate occasions, two-day sessions, which of course we will sponsor and host and organise, where we try to bring people in from outside, wherever that may be, and put people together in order to assist in the whole business of capacity building, understanding the whole business about transparent journalism and all the rest of it. So I look in the first instance, not right now, but in the first instance, to map those 3 opportunities, to get to know you and the wider group, the wider sort of media groups, in order to invite people to come and join that. And I think the key bit to those 3 activities, and then the work that we do together after that, is of course trying to find a senior Gambian editor, somebody who's got an academic background as well. In other words, somebody who can partner, not me because I'm clearly not the journalist, but whoever it is we bring in from the outside to help run these events. So for me, it's a perfect opportunity to say there's lots of stuff going on out there potentially in the next months, lots of opportunities for us to work together. But I very much sort of reach out and invite you to reach back in terms of contact with me, so that we can set these opportunities up, so that we can find those experts, both Gambian and other, in order for us to deliver those activities. I think that's probably about it, because it's been quite a comprehensive meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But I'm also asking you, like representatives of the media fraternity in the country, what do you individually do for the security reform of the country? It's not a criticism. It's in fact an invitation. Like, I would love to see in this country civil society debates, discussions about, what do we need for security in the future? I would love to see people thinking about what is really the role. I never heard, with maybe one exception, I never heard any thinker. When I mean thinker, I mean those who is interested in such issues, whether well-educated, with degree and diploma and whatever, or not. It doesn't matter, because everybody may have a view. But it would be healthy. It would be very healthy for such a fundamental reform. Exactly the question. I would love to see the Gambia, when I go up country, or towards Senegal, I will not be stopped by a military checkpoint where I ask the person what he's doing there, and he was unable to tell me why he was standing there. I would like to see if a military needs to be on the street at all, but if so, then he will explain why. Just going back to your very relevant question. But the fact that the issue is not really debated, I don't really read much of articles or interviews or discussions. I can't really read too much news about the Gambian civil society discussing this issue particularly. And I think it may well be, it may still be a very, very well organized and very well executed project, like in the sense of reforming the security by the government and many stakeholders. But I do believe if we are really talking about a process, a reform owned by the Gambia, led by the Gambia, then it is something which needs to be discussed by the Gambia. And if you not necessarily in your next daily paper edition or whatever article, but in your own living. I mean, journalists are the thinkers, or part of the thinkers in any country. You have your role to play. You have your responsibility, if you wish. We will continue with this media breakfast background discussion in the future as well. I'm not in position to tell you the next one, I tell you frankly, because it also depends on other activities. But in 3 months' time, we will surely have the next one. All right. Thank you for coming.
Hey, what are you doing here?
I'm going to replace my AfriCell 3G SIM card.
Why use a 3G SIM card when you have a 4G phone? Replace your 3G SIM card today for the real AfriCell 4G SIM and receive 1 GB of internet data for free.
Really?
Yes, get 1 GB for free just by replacing your SIM card at any AfriCell outlet with no loss of contact. The cost of bundle from the 3G SIM card is the same for the 4G SIM. And guess what? With the 4G SIM card, you can also connect to the 3G network as well.
This is so cool. I'll replace my 3G SIM card right away to the real 4G SIM and receive my very own 1 GB for free.
From AfriCell, it's always real and it's for free.
Where AfriCell goes, no one has the speed to follow.